Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So I had the pleasure of speaking twice at LeadsCon's Connect to Convert conference, and they also asked me to podcast live from the expo hall, which was filled with attendees, vendors, marketers, lead buyers, sellers, and so on. And I'm going to release a series of interviews that I recorded while podcasting there. Some are short and some are longer. And the first is one of my favorite speakers. I interviewed her way back on episode 52, and I've seen her speak at several shows and was elated to have her back on this show. I'll add a link so you can find that episode as well. Tamsen Webster is part keynote speaker, part message strategist, full-time idea whisperer on that big idea, and she's a subject matter expert in marketing and storytelling. And on this episode, we'll discuss lead generation, content marketing, storytelling, big ideas, the red thread, some Greek mythology, and a lot more. So let's tune in to part one of podcasting live at C2C with this year's opening keynote at Connect to Convert and last year's opening keynote, yes, me the shark, at the same conference on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. All right, everybody, welcome to A Shark's Perspective at LeadsCon's Connect to Convert conference. So I'm here today with Tamsen Webster, who gave an amazing keynote this morning.
Well, thanks, Shark. How are you?
I'm doing well. I wore the appropriate shark attire.
You did.
So,
and I wore attire that matches the stage.
You wore camouflage.
I wore camouflage. You'd have to see a picture, but
yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah. So what have you enjoyed about the event so far?
What I enjoy about the event so far, it's a very, very tactical conference, and I
Absolutely.
think that is super. I mean, there's actually strikes me, and I speak a lot of marketing conferences. There aren't that many ones that really just focus on the actual tools of it all.
No.
And I think that's a real benefit to the attendees.
Yeah, this is one of the least fluffy conferences you'll find because they're geared towards driving business growth.
Well, that's important.
Yeah,
I mean,
important,
we need to actually drive business
We've got
somewhere.
plenty of unemployed CMOs who didn't care about that. So.
That's right. Oh, poor CMOs.
Poor
it's
CMOs.
True. Yes.
Yeah, so your speech today, talk a little bit about the red thread and pulling it all together. I mean, again, I've seen this presentation several times, and I think it's fantastic. It's honestly one of my favorites. But talk about your mindset with marketing and how that applies to even a business growth conference and why people need to hear it and understand that message.
Well, so with a business growth conference, I mean, it all comes down to you can have all the leads, you can have all the tools. Ultimately, you still have to figure out what are you going to say to people that actually gets them to give you the green light. And so what I have found over and over again is that the way that you get people to do that is that you have to build their case for your idea. Yeah. And so what I was talking about today is, that case has a name. It's called the red thread. It's got its roots in Greek mythology for how Theseus found his way in and out of the Minotaur's labyrinth. But it really is this invisible thing, really, that connects a question to an answer. It connects a goal that a prospective customer has to the answer that your product or service represents. And a lot of times we want to just skip from question to answer. But the way our brains work is that we actually need that connection built for us. Our brains need that story to be built in between. And so what we were talking about today was all the parts of that story that have to be there in order for that case first to make sense, and how once it's constructed in a very particular way, you can make it kind of irresistible to the people that you talk to.
Yeah, and for somebody, one that just came from working for a brand and two has ADD, I need that simplified message because I don't. And a friend of mine's here who's also spoke yesterday talks about we tend to think way too much. We're in way too many meetings inside brands, inside agencies we work with, thinking that customers are peeling back the many layers of our brand. They're not.
They are not.
They're not wasting one moment on it. And when you try to niche out your story in such minutia ways, nobody keeps up with it, understands it, or cares about it because they get too many other brands that are reaching out to them with a similar type product or service.
That's right. And the thing is, like I think we've been sold a bill of goods for branding, and I say this as someone who's been a brand strategist for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because and I get it. It sells brand strategy work where you tell a company like you have to figure out like how all the pieces of your brand fit together, and then you have to message that out to the marketplace as if the marketplace can actually consume the entire brand. And I really don't think that that's the case. I think it's kind of that old parable of the elephant where somebody's touching the side of it and it was like, oh, it must be a wall, and somebody's touching the tail and like, oh, this must be a broom or something like that. And in fact, I think that parable is often brought as like, oh, people don't understand how it all fits together. I don't think customers need to figure out how it all fits together. As long as as long as they need a tusk and it's clear to them that you've got a tusk that works for them, that's all you have to do.
Well, I do a graphic, and I think I did it yesterday with how we're trying to solve complex problems. We don't need to offer them complex solutions.
No.
Because they've got options with somebody else who, even if you do a lesser job in advertising today, you can win if you can deliver that message more clearly.
100%. And there was new research just out of Gartner, like within the last 2 weeks, that backs this up.
You're not allowed to say that, though, because you're married to somebody who's at Edison Research.
They all respect
They're
each
friends,
other.
yeah.
And it's all good.
Anyway, go ahead.
But Gartner was showing that that what really is working now when it comes to particularly sales messages is what they termed buyer enablement. In other words, instead of what we've been doing for years now, which is dialing up the pain and dialing up the fear, that actually adds to customers' confusion. It adds to buyers' remorse. It adds to analysis paralysis. And then actually what salespeople and marketing people in particular should be doing is instilling confidence in
100%.
the buyer for the decision they're about to make sense of the information they're doing. And that's exactly why I think the kind of thing that I was talking about today is so important, because there is a universal way that people make sense of information. And so if you can take a very complicated problem and break it down into very simple pieces so that people can go, oh, okay, I want this thing, here's why I'm not getting it, here's what's getting in the way, here's what I know to be true. Oh, so that means we might need to do something like this. That's when you've got real gold with the people that you're talking to.
Well, you talked about the different kind of conferences you speak at, which generally are fluffier, if you will, and they don't focus on the tactical part of it.
Yeah.
I speak to a lot of them as well, and I think one of the things that groups like Leads, Con, Connect, and Convert have the opportunity to do is really to impact that change that we preach about, especially to younger marketers, because the guys that are at these kind of conferences, and I used to be a buyer of leads, and now we sell and create leads, is that messaging, all that stuff that we've taught them, can get completely lost if it's not delivered back to the customer. And so that's why I really, really love this conference, because it's kind of the go-between.
Yep.
The initial stuff we do in content and ads and everything else, and then translate that back to the customer. If you were, to give some advice to lead generators and buyers and sellers, what would be sort of the one core piece of advice you'd give them?
Core piece of advice, and I bang the drum all the time, is you've got to build your clients' and customers' case for action, not yours. Because the case that we build for our stuff is based on our own knowledge, our own belief that it's already great, our own belief that it's already the right answer, our own wants, all the things that we know it can do. But a lot of times,
but nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that, because I said it from the stage today. You have to solve the problem people say they have before you can solve the problem you know they have. And so that's where it really comes down to. It's like, you may, and you should believe that your product and service absolutely is the best thing. But what I see out there all the time is that people, want to get these better conversions, and what they end up, for good reason, what they end up focusing on is, again, their own case. Why is their stuff great? Forgetting, of course, that the people who need to make that decision are not in the same mental space as the company is. Like, the company exists because this product and service is the right thing, right? But your clients and customers don't know that yet, your prospective clients. So we have to start going back to, from the outside in, why would they convince themselves that this is the right thing for you to do? And that's really what we need to do for others.
So when you look at your marketing and messaging today, do you look at it more, do you think, as a marketer or as a consumer? Because I'm, especially now being more on the agency side now, for me, I still look at everything from a consumer perspective. So I even get mad at the same, I can get mad at the same agency I work for, because I believe, as having worked for a brand, but really having been as a consumer and how I apply it, it's helped me understand a lot more about marketing and advertising, looking at that way, because I don't think enough people are still customer focused first.
You know, they are. They think they are,
Yeah.
and I want to give them
Agreed.
credit for that.
That's true.
But when you start to really ask these hard questions of, well, what do they want right now, and the company comes back with what they want the customer to want, rather than what
Yeah.
the customer is actually saying they want, that's when that can be difficult. So, to your question about whether or not I look at it as a marketer or consumer, like my job with my clients is to be the proxy.
Yeah.
To be the person who believes in my client and what they're putting out there, but also be the proxy for the customer and say, I'm not hearing anyone ask that question that way.
Well,
so
to your credit, most of the speeches I've heard from you against what I've heard from a lot of other speakers is more marketer focused. It's more simply around that lens. I think, to your credit, you speak to it as to how it's going to impact the customer more than a lot of typical speakers in our space do. And that always concerns me, because there's a lot of stuff we can teach and preach about content marketing, for example, but where I always hear you talk about is how does it directly then impact the customer.
And the thing is, like, I can spend, a full day in a workshop teaching people the tactics, and I do, but but here's the thing, it's like, if I'm not already sure that you understand why I take the approach that I do, then it doesn't matter, because you may learn these tactics, it's great, but if you don't understand why they work, then it's not going to work long term, and I really believe that.
So I got to ask you a few questions. You've gone through this once on a previous episode, but I didn't get to ask you at the time.
Now we're going to compare my answers.
What is your favorite kind of shark and why? Have you ever been scuba diving?
I haven't done scuba diving.
Well,
No,
I'll give you some choices. It can be an actual shark. It could be a stuffed animal you had as a child. It could be Kevin O'Leary.
There's probably too many people who have said baby shark, so I'm not gonna do. No, actually, the shark because I think it's badass. Can I say that on your show?
Yeah, you can
is
say
the megalodon.
Yeah, good.
Prehistoric
Good
shark.
Jason Statham movie. So.
Yes.
All right. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions you're going to be asked today?
Yes.
All right. So, Batman or Iron Man?
Iron Man.
It's kind of a Marvel versus DC.
Do I have to explain my answers, or I just answer them and I stay
you don't have to.
mysterious? Okay.
Speaking at a conference in Boston or speaking at a conference in Vegas?
Actually, Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna explain it, but for several reasons, I actually prefer to speak in Vegas.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to beat Vegas for shows.
Well, quick explanation.
LeadsCon will be in March in Vegas.
In Vegas, I know. Well, it's actually part of my whole mental prep as a speaker, to be someplace else. And so it's
you get quiet time on the plane.
It's a very different prep thing. To just, literally I could have walked from my house here. Yeah. And I love, there's part of me that just loves that I can do this and I can go back home today. That's great. And this is such a good conference. And I can't wait for your listeners for LeadsCon in Vegas. I'm not there yet, but
it's a
conferences in Vegas.
Another big and great show that Access Intel does a great job with. So, number 3, the Chart House or Legal Seafood?
I have eaten at both. I'm gonna go legal.
Really?
I am, because I think legal has
the Chart House is the second oldest building still standing in Boston. At least that's what the waiter told us.
Behind the Paul Revere House?
Yes.
Yeah.
1763, it was John Hancock's accounting office.
The ambiance of the Chart House is lovely.
Exactly.
But what I appreciate about legal is A, the consistency of the food is always great, and B, that each of the locations has a slightly different menu, which I also appreciate.
That's true. Number 4, lead generation or content marketing?
Well, I'm a
Make sure nobody's looking if you say the other one.
So I, as a lifetime brand and message strategist, I'm gonna go content marketing on that one.
I don't know if you remember the answer on your previous show, but number 5 is biscuits or cornbread.
Biscuits.
All right, good answer. So Tamsen, where do you want people to find you later on?
Best place to find me is tamsenwebster.com and reach out to me there. I'm probably most active social network-wise on Instagram. So that's
Perfect.
Instagram or Twitter. So that's be the
Awesome.
place.
All right, Tamsen, thank you so very much.
Thanks, Shark.
So there was my conversation with Tamsen Webster, the opening keynote of 2019's Connect to Convert conference, and she's part keynote speaker, part message strategist, full-time idea whisperer on that big idea, and she's a subject matter expert in marketing and storytelling. So let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from a conversation with her. First, I'm a big fan of Tamsen, especially her message regarding the red thread. I'm completely oversimplifying that message, but we should continue to align and simplify our messaging to customers. Give them something to hold on to with our brands. Make it memorable. Find that red thread that runs through the story and have customers love us. Oversimplification, but find where Tamsen's speaking and enjoy her presentation. Second, she reminds us that we as marketers have been dialing up the pain and dialing up the fear for a long time, but we should be instilling confidence in our products and services. So true. Third, so what's her core piece of advice? As she said, and I quote, "Bill your clients' and customers' case for actions, not yours." She goes on to say that we should shift the focus. You've often heard me say the same on many episodes. A lot of companies think they are, and she reminds us that they should believe in their product, yes. But again, ask yourself, why should they believe in you? It's not what you want, but what the customers are saying they want. We as marketers need to speak more as advocates of the customer. Maybe then we'd all listen better. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. So let's connect and convert on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.